There we go. Okay, awesome. All right. Well, this is our 5-day nutrition reset. We have made it to day 2 already. I had a really awesome time yesterday doing our live training and getting the feedback from you guys, both in the group. And I know a lot of you either don't have Facebook or aren't a part of this group yet, but I want you to be. And so you've watched the YouTube live replay. So I've seen some emails and questions and things come through from there. One thing I did want to just mention, we had a chat going in the group, on the Facebook group yesterday about the recipes being in MyFitnessPal to go and log in. So I did think that was a really great idea, but I just wanted to share something with you about that too, especially for those that missed the conversation in Facebook. So the idea is if you're tracking your food intake in MyFitnessPal instead of using the food log that I gave you in the manual, you don't have to necessarily type in all of the things, all the recipes on those ingredients. I actually added them in under specific recipes that you can now search for. So I'll put this in the email too, just to clarify this, but every recipe that's on there, the title is in there as it's seen, with the JD Nutrition right in front of it. It'll say JD Nutrition cheeseburger salad, for example. And so you should be able to find them that way. I did have a hard time putting everything in yesterday. I would do about 3 recipes and then it would just sort of shut me out. So I think I still have 2 recipes to do for Friday, but after today's call, I'm going to try again to do that. And I'll let you know ASAP when those get in. So just know that that's there. So for some easy tracking, that can be in there. However, one thing I did notice, and what you will notice about calorie counts and nutrition information on recipes that you're finding either here or online, wherever, and what you're putting in highly depends on the ingredients that you're choosing. So when a recipe is created and they're putting in the nutrition information, they're going to be doing it based on specific products that they're purchasing versus things that you have. So just even looking at the difference between using like a plain non-fat Greek yogurt and a full fat Greek yogurt for the chicken ranch salad that we have, the dressing is a Greek yogurt base. Pretty big difference in calories if you're using full fat versus non-fat. Same thing for full fat cheese versus reduced, and lots of other little changes just between brands can really skew some of those. So I urge you to look at those recipes so that you can track them relatively easily and get a good big picture, but just make sure that your ingredients are pretty similar. So as you're putting a recipe together, just kind of eyeball it, looking at the food labels and things as you go and say, this seems like it's going to be a lot higher using the ingredient I picked versus what is in the recipe. And so you can kind of gauge whether or not you're going to be on track or not. So it may not seem like a big deal, but if you're using your tracking long-term as intended and you're trying to figure out why you've hit a weight loss plateau, whether or not the calorie goal that you're set at is working for you, really depends on whether or not you're actually hitting that. And if your numbers are a little bit off, it's going to be really hard to figure out your next step. So the better you can do, the more accurate you can be in tracking, the better it's going to be for you in the long term as well. So that's that. All right. So I also know that some of you are joining us new. So we had a few additions to the group the past couple of days. So thank you for those of you who invited some friends to join you on this challenge. Now they're here and that's awesome. And it's fine if you want to still invite others too. So you can really start this challenge any day that you want. So if someone wants to join for tomorrow or later today, then that's fine too. So feel free to invite friends still. The more the merrier, right? But if you missed my intro yesterday, my name is Jackie Duran. I'm a registered dietitian here at JD Nutrition LLC, and I created the Ditch the Diet online program to help people get out of this cycle of yo-yo dieting and stick to a weight loss plan long-term consistently so that they can get to that goal weight finally and stay there. Maintenance is a huge portion of our program there. So you'll notice that I mentioned that as I talk, lots of examples of people that are having really great success there as well. So that's why I talk about that. And we'll talk about it a little bit more later this week as well. But I just want to see here, if you are here live and watching live, just go ahead and give me a comment and let me know that you're here live. I always like to see who's watching. Just give me a quick hand wave. And then we'll get started in our free training for today. So let me bring up my screen here. Hopefully it'll go a little smoother than yesterday. All right. So if you watched yesterday's live call, either live or the replay, we talked a little bit about what we need for weight loss in general, right? So we sort of backed up the train a little bit and we talked about how at the end of the day, no matter what sort of program you follow, we still need some sort of calorie deficit, right? Your body needs to be burning off more calories than it's taking in order to tap into those fat stores that you'd like to get rid of and use that for energy. That's just how weight loss happens, okay? And so now you are in your second day of the challenge if you started first thing yesterday, and hopefully you're feeling really great, but there's also a good chance that you're feeling a little bit hungry, right? And hopefully you've already had lunch for today, but there may be some certain spots where you're just feeling a little bit low energy, feeling a little bit more hungry, as you are trying to stick more to a schedule that we have here. And don't worry, that's perfectly normal. So if you think that nobody else is experiencing that right now, you're all just hiding it really well. Okay, I've seen lots of comments, lots of good things coming through on the Facebook group, but no one has just rightly said, I am starving. Although there was one that came up this morning, which I will say. Which is good. So share these struggles. So as everyone is going through that, there's no really reason to be shy about what we're going through. This group is really here with this challenge and going forward to be a bouncing point for that kind of stuff. So let us know what you're struggling with so that we can work through it together, right? So we know that anytime you're adjusting your eating habits, we're going to see fluctuations in your hunger. That is perfectly normal. But if you've ever dieted before, it may be sort of a negative point for you, right? So just expecting that you're going to feel hungry and feeling like you're giving things up. It's a really negative way to look at weight loss, but unfortunately it has probably been your reality going from the past, right? So first off, remember that this is a 5-day challenge. We can do anything and stick to our guns for 5 days. And what our aim here with these live trainings are, and especially for today, is really to make the most of the information that you're getting so you can adjust and tailor what you're doing so that you're not feeling as hungry. You're feeling like this can be more of a long-term eating pattern rather than just something you stick out for 5 days and get through it. But know that this adjustment period is normal. So as you change things, you will be a little bit more hungry for a few days. So just be mindful of that. And understand where it's coming from, that your body is just reacting to a change, right? So understand that in a challenge like this with a basic meal plan, we also can't account for everybody's needs exactly, right? Okay, so everybody's calorie needs are going to be a little bit different. And in the Ditch the Diet program, one of the first things we do in weeks 1 and 2 is figure out what your optimal calorie range is for a weight loss plan, okay? And there are some calculations that go into that, but just know that the meal plan isn't calorie controlled to a specific number. And it can range. I've seen people's numbers come up for their goals anywhere between 1,200 and 2,200 calories per day as their goal, right? So there's 1,000 calorie swing there. And unless you're getting that number right, you're either going to be under eating, overeating, or staying exactly the same. And all of those things are bad. So we need to find that sweet spot. And what we do in the program is hone in on that the best that we can, and then figure out with a number of different factors whether that number is actually valid for you. And it's going to change as you progress in your weight loss, as you work more towards a maintenance phase and all of these other things. And as you change your weight loss, your rates and things like your plateaus and stuff like that, you're going to have to shake things up a little bit. So it helps to have a program like that on your side, so you can say, all right, I've hit this stage. What do I do now? And that is my job to help you figure that out. So as you can see, though, that calorie range can depend on a lot of different things. So mostly it has a lot to do with where you're starting, right? So someone who is 300 pounds starting a weight loss journey is going to be eating quite a bit more than someone that has maybe 10 or 15 pounds to lose, right? So we still need to feed and nourish a larger body to support that weight, right? And that all of the weight that we have, so you still need body functions and all of that stuff. And as you get lower and lower, it tends to change. So just know that there's a lot going on there. And that last one, the hormonal fluctuations, you can actually burn more calories during different times of the month for women. If you're more stressed or you're not sleeping and your cortisol hormones are coming up, that can actually change your calorie needs and all of that as well. So all of those factors we discuss in a little bit more detail within the program too. So all that said, picking a generic number for yourself to follow here can be a big mistake, right? So most likely you're going to be getting it wrong if you heard that someone with your similar body type did really well at 1,200 calories or 1,400 calories or whatever. That's still not specific enough to you. And so if you're trying really hard to hit that number, but that number is not right for you, you're going to be disappointed and you're going to fail, right? And we don't want that to happen. So starting with the right information the first time can be really helpful. Okay. So in this 5-day challenge, we can't unfortunately go through all of that to figure that out and really hone in on that number. But what we can do is work with some portion control tips and things like that to help you hone in on that yourself and hopefully get it right from there. Okay. All right. So let's see here. We are going to go now to the hunger and fullness scale. And so this is one tactic that we use in order to help determine whether or not a calorie goal is appropriate. So after we've done some calculations and figured out a good starting number, a best guess effort, we still try to use this hunger and fullness scale to determine whether or not we're feeling too hungry during the day, which may indicate that you're not eating enough, or if you're more than satisfied all the time and you've gone that way for a longer period of time, you may be just at a maintenance level and there may be some wiggle room to change that a little bit here. Okay. So I wanted to bring up here too that this is really an act of intuitive eating or mindful eating. And this may be something that you've heard before. Okay. So if you're here live, just let me know if you have heard of mindful eating, have tried instilling mindful eating techniques. Just kind of curious where you guys are with that. And so this scale here is very subjective, right? So what feels at like what's a 0 for me, like a neutral or satisfied feeling, is really a matter of my perception. Okay. And so this can be a really hard thing to use because we cannot naturally trust our intuition and our body's natural hunger signaling when we're in a weight loss pattern. And let me explain why. So intuitive eating is basically the idea that your body knows what it needs. And so it's got hunger hormones to tell you when you need energy, and fullness cues, fullness hormones to tell you when you're done. And that would prompt you to stop, right? So that system is there. It's a good thing, right? We still need that, but it's set to maintaining your weight. So it's not a good thing instinctually for our bodies to lose weight, right? We want to maintain some extra fat storage in order to survive, right? So if we were in a situation where we're out in a desert, trapped on a desert island, what have you, pick your survival situation, and you don't have access to food regularly, we need that in order to survive. And that is the only criteria that your body is following, okay? And so when you're trying to lose weight, you're actively trying to work against that system that is trying to maintain you, right? And so when you're trying to cut calories, you're naturally going to feel like you're not quite satisfied. You're going to feel like this -1, -2, pretty much all the time in a calorie deficit. So it's not going to feel natural. So you won't be able to necessarily trust mindful eating in that intuitive idea of when to stop, because it's based on more than you need, right? So what we're going to talk about today is portion control tips and things to help you stay satisfied and comfortable at this -1 to -2, so that you can be in a calorie deficit, but not be so hungry that you inevitably can't follow a weight loss plan, right? So that, I think, is the biggest challenge when it comes to losing weight, is that feeling satisfied and comfortable for long enough to actually lose the weight that you'd like to lose, okay? So we still can use some mindfulness to test out things like a calorie deficit. So, honing in on how you're feeling during and after a meal, or even going into a meal, can dictate how much you serve yourself, at what point you stop eating, whether or not you go back for seconds, and all of that. So this is our first look into mindful eating. We start bringing this in the first few weeks of the 12-week program that I'm telling you about, but we really don't tackle the idea of mindful eating for weight maintenance going forward until further in the program, until we can start to rely more on those intuitive eating skills. Let's see here. Okay, so let's talk about some of those rules. So like I said, we want to be somewhat hungry all the time, and that sounds crappy, doesn't it? Because we don't really want to be hungry all the time, but we can make this feel a little less edgy in a case, right? So yesterday we talked a little bit about minding a schedule for eating, which can be really helpful. So if we're eating every 3 to 4 hours, that helps us avoid these very hungry situations. Let me just go back here. So when you're feeling like a 4 or a 5, a -4 or a -5, you have let your blood sugar go too low. And now you're at a point where you're going to eat anything in sight. And I have a lot of people come to me and say, I just have no self-control when it comes to the foods that are in front of me. And they just feel so down on themselves. Like, why can't I avoid the sweet foods? Why do I constantly overeat? I get a lot of people with binge eating tendencies and even diagnosed binge eating disorder coming to me here as well. And it really, most of the time, more than it is any sort of emotional connection, is just this physiological state. They're letting their blood sugar get too low, and any sort of willpower that they have had is shut off, right? It becomes a matter of that initial survival mechanism, your hunger hormones getting higher and higher and higher until you finally give in. And it's going to be big, and it's going to be carbs. Let's be honest, because most people are not binging on salad, right? So do not let yourself get to this -4, -5. Mind your 3 to 4 hour window the best that you can. And we talked yesterday about, if that doesn't necessarily mean like a meal at those times, there could be snacks in the middle there as well. Okay. So now the same thing can be true when you stop as well. So we don't want to get so full that we're past this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? We don't want to be stuffed at any given time, because we know that inherently is too much to eat. Okay. And so what we can use that mindful eating for is helping to create natural stopping points for yourself before you get to this higher state, this sick to your stomach, that even feeling this yellow one, full, tired, sluggish at a +3, okay? Even those are signals that you're eating too much at any given time. But it's hard to stop, right? It's hard to know. So let's talk about some of the rules to help you navigate this without even tracking calories. So if we even take the idea of tracking out of this, which for this challenge, I do ask that you do, just for planning purposes going forward, but these rules can serve you well beyond these 5 days here as well. All right, so let's go through some of our rules here. So basically in the program, over a 12-week period, we essentially relearn how to eat using some of these tactics. And so we're sort of scratching the surface for the big ideas of how to make this happen. And then in the program, you can always dive in a little bit deeper into some more different things for eating and creating a long-term plan for yourself. But let's discuss a few tricks that we can help to curb the overeating just here in your first 5 days. So first things first, choosing lighter meal options can be really helpful. And of course, we are stacked with those this week. We've got that 5-day meal plan with some lighter options there. And essentially lighter just means having less calories, right? And so if you were to think about or even track a meal that your family eats regularly and look in there, you may be eating things for dinner that are maybe 1,000 calories. And let's say, if you're somewhere around a 1,500 calorie goal, you're eating most of that within one meal. Okay. So there are obviously some places where you can make cuts. And so choosing lighter options across the board is helpful, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to eat completely different things. I think this challenge is fun because you do get the chance to try some different flavors and different options and see how that goes. But remember, we learned yesterday about this little plating chart that we have, right? So even if you take a meal that you have often, and what I'll give it as an example is like a spaghetti dinner, for an example. You don't have to make that for your family and then make some boiled chicken for yourself, chicken and rice and broccoli, which is like my all-time diet picture in my head is what people do. What you can do is have the same meal, but change the proportions, right? And so if you're focusing on having half of your plate be the side salad that you usually serve with your meal, and then this second half of your plate be the spaghetti and meatballs, what it's doing is allowing you to have the thing that you want. And that is part of that social structure of your family meal, right? But you're focusing on the veggies that are lower in calorie. And so naturally, you're going to lighten up that meal, okay? So very simple in that respect. So if there are meals that you just love as is, you don't want to use lighter ingredients, you don't want to find new recipes for, there's really no reason to. And if you have a family that's or any sort of picky eater, anyone that you eat with would like to just keep the meals the same way, then you can still do the same meals with just some basic changes. Okay. All right. So we can choose some lighter meal options here. And what this is doing at the same time too is allowing you to fill up more on the lower calorie stuff, but the bulk of your plate and the size of the food itself, like just bulk wise, what you're eating is still the same. And so psychologically, it makes you feel more full. It makes you feel like you're not missing out on anything there. So serving yourself less can provide the same effect, the same psychological effect. So of course, serving yourself less, we could just simply serve ourselves less in this framework by focusing more on those veggies. That can be one. But now for portion sizes in general, where should you be? Okay. So just for the challenge and thinking about just getting through the rest of this week, what I would suggest is focusing on the serving sizes that you see on the recipes. That's going to be a good start. So we have the calorie information, the nutrient information, and the balance that we see in the meals that are put together are already in this structure. Okay. So you can simply adhere to the portion size, get your body used to eating maybe a little bit less in a different proportion, and then worry more about meal planning when we talk about that. I think we're doing that Thursday. We're going to go more in depth of what to do after this. Okay. But what we can do as well in serving less is if you are typically a person that serves more than you need and you tend to feel stuffed at the end of the meal, we already know that we probably can't rely on that natural intuition of what a good serving size for you is, right? So if historically you feel stuff at the end of the meal, or you just, eyes bigger than stomach, tend to take more than you need, and you start feeling stuffed halfway through, then maybe start serving yourself half of what you would normally do. So again, with that example, the spaghetti and meatballs, instead of taking a full plate of spaghetti and meatballs, serve it on half of your plate and then add a veggie. Okay. So it kind of all comes back to this idea here. And that can go forward with any other thing. And I think that tip specifically is really helpful when you get into like soup season or have mixed dishes and casseroles and things like that you can't really visualize being in this structure. So take that big bowl, make it a small bowl, and start there. Okay. And so you may be wondering, well, what the heck do I do if I'm still hungry after that? So what you can do is serve yourself half with the intention of reassessing where you are with your hunger after you actually finish. And so serving yourself half gives you a natural stopping point for you to have to make another decision. Okay. If the pile of food is right in front of you and you have the whole bowl, most of us are ingrained from childhood to finish everything on your plate, right? And unfortunately, I know that, and I still teach my daughter those same things, like eat your chicken nuggets, please finish something on your plate. And it's just natural for parents to do that and want them to eat everything. But as adults, we carry those same rules. And so what you can do is use that to your advantage and serve yourself less so that you have to make another decision for more. And that will just help you from overeating long term. So something that pairs really well with that too is the idea of eating slowly. Okay, so it takes quite a bit of time, usually about 20 to 30 minutes, for your brain to register that your stomach is full. So the signaling between your stomach and brain does take a little bit of time. And if you are eating relatively mindlessly and eating very quickly, you can have been stuffed 5-10 minutes ago, but it's not going to actually register in your brain for another 10 minutes. Okay. So you can do a lot of damage in terms of how much you're eating in that time. And that can be counteracted by simply eating very slowly. Now, mindless eating comes into play a lot there. And so if you tend to just sort of have a bowl of something in front of you, and then all of a sudden you look down and it's gone, that is mindless eating. And a lot of times that is because you're watching TV or trying to help your kid eat at the same time. You're scrolling your phone, maybe lunchtime, stuff like that. So any distractions that you can eliminate out of there, things that are within your control so you can eat a little bit more slowly, is going to help you to avoid these overeating patterns. And of course, if you are serving yourself less and you mindlessly eat less, you still have that natural stopping point to help you decide again. So that serving yourself less is a really big one there. All right, so the other side of that coin we need to address here as well. So what if the serving sizes on some of these meals that we're looking at this week seem like way more than you're eating? And if you're in the chat, I want to see, if you're here live, I just want to see if anybody's experiencing that here. I'm just going to stop sharing here for 1 second. I'm not sure if I can see this or not. There we go. All right, I see a couple of you here live. And I'm hoping that we can see the comments live as well. So this is sort of a new system for me here. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to go back to sharing here. So we've been talking a lot about overeating. But part of the issue with chronic dieting and, being on yo-yo diets, which is pretty historically what my clients are experiencing, is you diet yourself down to nothing. And so you may have started with, a 16 calorie deficit, didn't see anything happening. So you dropped 100, and all of a sudden you're basically eating like a bird, and you've got no wiggle room for any additional calories because you've damaged your metabolism so much that everything is shut down. You're literally burning the bare minimum. And this is an unfortunate situation where people do find themselves. And so if you are looking at the meal plan for this week and you're like, wow, that is way too much, I'm never going to eat that. What I would suggest is experimenting with eating more this week and just giving it 5 days time to see what that does for you. Okay. So you may be pleasantly surprised to actually start feeling some hunger signals again. So many people, a common symptom of that under eating, dieting mentality is not feeling hungry during the day. And so many people hold the reality of, well, I'm not going to eat because I'm not hungry, well, if you have ignored your hunger signals for so long that you're no longer recognizing those, that could be part of the issue, right? And so maybe what you need to be doing this week as part of your challenge is actually forcing, and I hate that word to use it, but really prompting yourself to eat more often to reestablish some of these hunger signals that you may have lost with chronic dieting too. Which I could talk all day about that. So if you guys are experiencing that, let me know in the chat, in the group, in the email, wherever you're seeing this, because I want to know and make sure that we're addressing that too. But usually the overeating is more common. Okay. So give yourself the opposite challenge of eating a little bit more than you're used to. Try not to stuff yourself if that is the case, but at least hold that 3 to 4 hour rule. Try to get some sort of meal, or even if it's like a snack size version of that meal, get something in there. And hopefully that will help as well. But like I said, that's sort of an opposite, similar problem, but we need to address that as well. All right. The last, actually, you know what? I added another one. So there's 2 more. Drink water, relatively simple. Okay. So you may be wondering why I included drinking half of your body weight in water in this challenge. Hydration is always great for a number of reasons, but one of the biggest things is actually helping with curbing hunger. Okay. So 2 reasons this is important. So first off, our body sends out very similar signals for when you're thirsty and when you're hungry. And so when you are just sort of baseline dehydrated, you may just feel like a stronger appetite happening. Okay. And so if you're just eliminating that as a possibility by staying hydrated, that can really help. Second, if you're using water as a resource to help you avoid this overeating at a specific meal, that can be really handy too. So drinking a big glass of water beforehand, drinking while you're eating, helps to fill your stomach faster and shuts down those hunger signals a little bit sooner. Okay. And so that can make the difference between eating more or eating a calorie deficit, because a lot of the fullness in your stomach is actually water, right? So of course, if you are really low on calories and really low on that energy, your body's going to send those signals out again, but at least it gives you an opportunity to avoid that overeating to begin with. Okay. So drinking lots of water, always a good thing. And then the thing that I added that I did not actually put on the slide is about meal planning and prep. And so someone had posted something about feeling particularly hungry coming home after work before dinner is ready. Okay. And this is a common problem. I'd say probably 90% of people I talk to have experienced this at some point. So that is a lower energy part of the day to begin with. And so your body does start searching for food energy to help perk you back up. You've already done all the things, you've worked, you're ready to settle down. And if you're still doing stuff, then your body's going to be looking for that energy there. Pair that with, you have no idea what's for dinner. You don't really feel like cooking because you're already tired. Most likely the things that you're going to eat are going to be snacky because it's going to be a quick source of energy to boost you up. It's going to be unbalanced. And by the time you're done with your snacking session, you can say goodbye to whatever calorie deficit you wanted, right? So this is a big part of it, is having things ready to go so that it becomes an easy decision what to do. So think of where your brain is in this state, right? You're tired, it's the end of the day. If your blood sugar is dropping too, that also means that your brain doesn't have fuel to make good decisions. So you're going for those quick sources of energy, those easy solutions, even when you know it's inherently wrong, right? Because we all just end up feeling guilty about that. So for this challenge, we talked about doing snacks, fruits and veggies between meals. So if you haven't already, just making sure that stuff is washed and cut up and ready to go, that you can just grab it out of the fridge. We're talking quick decisions here. That's how your brain is going to work at that time of day and anytime you're feeling hungry. So get that stuff ready to go. And knowing what your next meal is going to be really helpful as well. And so that is sort of a built-in perk to having a meal plan for this week. If you've bought all that stuff, you at least have gone through the hurdle of the question of what's for dinner, which is usually the hardest part to making a good decision. So the more that you can plan ahead or have very simple go-to ideas that you can throw together really quickly, which we talk about a lot in the program as well. There's actually tons of meal plans and different meal prep resources to get that done really quickly, week to week, in the program. So we do tackle issues like that as well. And I'd say that's probably more key than all of the rest of this, is simply having some sort of structure, some sort of plan in place to help to secure that success for yourself. All right, and I think that's all I wanted to say on this slide here. Yeah, and we are just about out of time too. I try to keep this between 30 and 45 minutes. Just keep it simple here. So let's recap a little bit what we've learned just over the last couple of days. And as we go through the week, we're going to build on this some more. So we know that we need this calorie deficit to lose weight, but we know that can also be really uncomfortable to eat less. Okay. And so what we're talking about today is curbing hunger to make this more sustainable. You need to be able to follow whatever plan you choose long enough to lose the weight. And the only way to do that is to feel satisfied. Okay. So using some of the portion control tips that we talked about can help us eat less naturally, even if you aren't tracking, and help you stay within that calorie deficit if you do have a specific goal in mind. Timing is another big one, which we covered yesterday. If you didn't watch that replay, go ahead and watch that again. But generally looking for a 3 to 4 hour window between meals and snacks will help to avoid that ravenous hunger. And if you are looking to eat in a calorie deficit without tracking, or to help gauge whether or not your calorie goal is appropriate, going for a 0 to -1 on that hunger scale pretty regularly will ensure that you're generally satisfied, but you are eating a little bit less than what you need. And that helps to create that calorie deficit over time. So I will post that chart in the group. So if you want to take a closer look back at that, or you can also screenshot, you can screenshot this, just go back in the video and screenshot that if you'd like that. But just try to eat to a little bit less than satisfaction without feeling ravenous is really the goal. All right, now tomorrow, I think I had sent you guys a full schedule of what we're doing, but I decided to flip-flop something here and save most of our planning for Thursday and Friday. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the other side of this weight loss equation, which is the calories we're putting out. So with exercise and daily activity, how to do that, going into more detail about some recommendations and understanding why that's so important and how to actually get that done. So I know I've challenged you to at least 30 minutes of activity. So hopefully you've been able to do that yesterday and today at least. And tomorrow we'll talk about how to continue that going long term. But I'm just going to check real quick, stop this, go to comments and just see if there was anything here. Okay, so some comments here, some under eating, filling up quickly, unable to finish some of the meals that we're talking about, that chicken lettuce wrap. Okay. All right, good. So we do see some of the under eating. We do see some filling happening as well, which is also good. So if you're creating some of these recipes and you're looking at how much you can actually have and wondering how the heck you're going to eat that, that's a good problem to have, right? So we want to keep an eye on that, and that may level out as you get through the week and get into a new routine too. So keep that in mind. But that is all we had for training for today. So I'll go ahead and let you go. But of course, any questions that you have throughout the program, I am here to answer for you. So feel free to either post it in the Facebook group, send me an email, however you're doing this challenge, and we'll get you taken care of. But I'll meet you back here tomorrow again, 2 p.m. Eastern, live in the group for some more training. Have a great day, everyone.